Oh, I'm Margaret. I'm Margaret in Windsor, and I'm going to try to finish that last tape. It had on there what they're doing to me. I put my glasses on. I'm allergic to chemicals, and they've force-fed me chemicals since I've come here, really, and prior to that, too, when I look back. In my past, I didn't know I was allergic to chemicals. I have a immune disorder to where if I get around certain industrial or household cleaners that my immune system attacks itself. And over the years, being force fed them, being gassed is another word for it. When I would get a place to live, it was already waiting for me or planned. So I was gassed using the air conditioning heating system as a murder weapon is what they've done, even if it was central air. As in Joseph's Way over in Bedford, that's a retirement for the elderly, and it's done in, they've got like a little village, and there's separate houses there, or accommodations, and reasonably nice. And all these places have been nice for other people other than me, at least the Section 8 HUD, that's what they've reduced me to, and lucky to get that, I'm told, when I got that. When you're being gassed, I'm sure if someone referred to the Jews or any American being gassed, or, hey, let's go over to Syria. You all think it's horrible that they're being gassed, and it is horrible. It's horrible that anybody is gassed, except me, I suppose, because it's been fun for the Americans to do it to me. If you consider, I'll be 75 in a couple of days, the 7th of this month. And they kidnapped me at age 2 and brought me over here in 41 in Moulton, Alabama, and gave me the name of Peggy Ann Dempsey Childers, married to Childers. Peggy was a twin to Carl. They were both dead, had even had different birthdays or dates, and their mother, Lina, had killed them because they were born out of wedlock, I suppose, or she's a psychopath, or was. She's deceased now. She never paid for a moment of a crime done to her 2 twins or to me, which was horrendous. Now then, I'm going to go back and I'm going to scan and show these pictures. And I want to say this. I mean, what's being done to me, I pray that this is over, and probably the very agency doing it, if the British aren't able to. The British have been there with what they could do, more than they could do. I don't know how they've survived, first of all, and some Germans, because Americans indeed are above their law, above the law. 75 years of my hell in life should tell it right here in front of everybody, if it's allowed to be told. So I want to show my father in this, and then I want to tell you about the mind control murders. For whatever reason, they had me do it. Before I found out about being kidnapped and being Margaret Ann Windsor, heir to the British Crown, Victoria II, kidnapped and all that, my real name, I wrote a book, medical malpractice book, MD, A License to Kill. And I was living at Moonraker Apartments in Marietta, Georgia on Powers Ferry Road. It was owned by Penthouse Magazine and then later the Mormon Church out of Utah. So I'm just giving you a little background because the mind control murders were done in patterns. And if you can stop and think, I was living at Moonraker, which was later, a couple years later, Roger Moore movie, 007 Moonraker. And it even had something in there, it was kind of like out of space, too, that was used in it, but something about like a mind control receptor, or I don't know, could microwave mind controller. I don't remember now, but it's the name of the movie, Moonraker, in 007. And then MD License to Kill was the name of my book, and License to Kill was a 007 with Timothy Dalton that came out just a few years later. So it's like I didn't know about my kidnapping at that time. I was just writing the book about the doctors and mind control, and they're the ones that, the ones I was writing about mind control and programming people when Larry Flint was shot in Lawrenceville, Georgia in March of 78. And the person that shot him was programmed to shoot him and also killed his attorney there when he shot Larry Flint. By the way, if anybody cares, Larry Flint tried to tell people what was going on. So you can condemn him for one thing you have, but people buy the magazines and videos. On the other hand, the man tried to tell the truth about what was the political truth about the Bloomingdales and so much of it, and about mind control. And anyway, when Larry Flint was shot in Lawrenceville, and that was about 40 miles from me where I was doing the book. I was in Marietta. I'm told by an NBC person, this is quite a few years ago when I came to Roanoke, that he was shot with a Magnum, and they had reels of film where his guts were all over the street there. So how could he have survived? This was what the man said to me, too. Now, I was out there, and I hope I'm not spilling anything and hurting, if that's Larry Flint or not Larry Flint. He's a hell of a long shot. I shouldn't even have to say this. They talk about good and bad. I've seen the bad in judges, law enforcement, lawyers, doctors most of all, that were the scum of the earth, and people who pretend to be reporters and working to tell the truth. Nothing but liars and cover-up, and caused so many people to die. But there was another thing. Larry Flint came here. I was out at his home in '83 during a political campaign. And so I'm jumping ahead a little. I had done the book in 77, 78, and he was shot 78. I had a letter from the FBI in June 23rd of 79, where there was an ongoing investigation, national security involved. And not long after then, April Fool Day in 80, I had antifreeze put in me. And I should have gone into a coma and died. Instead, they really tried to kill me. They didn't do a tox report. That's the reason I went to the emergency room, to try to find out what had been forced into me so that I could get an antidote or something. Instead, man, they really meant to kill me, and they put me from one place to the other, and then finally, this woman, Dempsey, I grew up being told she was my mother, illegally forced me across the state line, where I guess they thought they were really had me then. Instead, I managed to survive, and I worked for the district attorney with brain damage that you ever had your hand burned or baked? Try having your brain, and you can't take your brain out and show it to anybody. They're just trying to say you're nuts or something. Well, I did get finally across the state line. How many days later? 9 days later, I did get the tox report done. And instead of sending it to Alabama like it's legal, it was sent back to Atlanta, and that's where it came from. All those many days later, and it showed the antifreeze, and I've forgotten the other over the years that was in it. I've never even drank. I've sipped a few years ago. Well, I don't know that I even sipped it. Just to be sociable, now I just told them to go to hell. If they didn't like I didn't drink, okay. But I did order, and that's it. I never drank them. I would order Coke. Remember, Howard Johnson had a Hojo, and I used to get mad because I couldn't get a Coke to drink because I like Coca-Cola, and not have to order a drink just to appease everybody and sit in front of me and be called sociable, But I never drank. So I don't remember what was in the all was put in me, but antifreeze, and I should have died. It baked my brain. It was brain damage. Now I hope I can go back to here. I told you about Moonraker and A License to Kill. Now then, I've jumped forward after being given the antifreeze on April Fool Day as an April Fool joke. 83 at Larry Flint's, I had to run for U.S. Congress to replace Larry McDonald, who was from Atlanta, and he was a doctor, urologist, where a lot of these murders took place and that I was writing about. And he was, yes, Congressman urologist. Well, after me trying to get the book published, the antifreeze and all this, now his plane, or the plane he's on, the Korean KAL Jet 007, is shot down by the Soviet MiG because it veered out of airspace into theirs. And all the people aboard, including, and it's questionable if Larry McDonald was really on the plane, because in Juneau, it was headed from Juneau to Seoul. And in Juneau, Alaska, before takeoff, Nixon was on it, and he was taken off. And I have heard, whether it's true or not, that Geraldo was on the plane and got off in Juneau. So it went on, the plane went on to crash, but Nixon was on it and taken off, and Larry McDonald was on it, and whether he got off or went down, as they say, is questionable, okay? But I was in the campaign to replace him, and that was August 31st of 83. Well, I was flown out to Larry Flint's, and by the way, I'm going to get back to, and I'm going to show you the hustler where he endorsed me, because the people that shot him were connected to Warren and Rosina Matthews, forensic pathologists that worked at Larry McDonald's Hospital, Piedmont, as pathologists, and they were murdered, and the people were under mind control that shot them and killed them. That was in Cobb County, and it gets into a fiasco that people don't put together. Although I had certainly put it out there, crawling, and my job's gotten to, and besides the antifreeze and locked down to where I couldn't get a place to live or anything. But the thing is that Larry, that I'm going to get back to, is Larry Flint showed me the galleys proofs while I was there in 83. October, I was out there twice at his home. He showed me the galley proof of Jerry Falwell and the toilet, and it was a parody. So that the reason he showed me that is because I guess that he knew I was going to be here in Roanoke, which is next to Lynchburg, where Falwell was located at Liberty University. So he had to have done this endorsement also ahead of time. I never knew it. This is October 83. And the endorsement was done April of 84, and so they had to have known ahead of time. I didn't speak to him. They furnished me a car, hustler did, while I was out there, and then later I had no money. I was sent back to Atlanta, and I ended up in Grottoes, Virginia, and up in D.C. for a little while. So I didn't talk to Larry Flint after then, but just when I was living in Falls Church, I got the Hustler magazine that I'm going to show you sent to me. So they knew where I was, and I got a phone call, and the gentleman on it, the call said, this is Malcolm Barber from Hustler magazine. He said, Larry Flint's scared to death. He's lost you. He doesn't know where you are. And all this, and well, of course they knew where I was. They just sent the Hustler magazine to me. And I said to him, I said, you're Malcolm Barber. You're working for Hustler. You're FBI out of Macon, Georgia, in Atlanta. And he said, yes. Well, now, I happen to like Malcolm Barber. I met him. So I'm not saying he's bad or anything, but I'm showing you kind of the way people will dismiss it and say, oh, well, you're just a Looney Tune. So I pull out the Hustler and show them, and they lose interest. And here's where they don't care. It's a joke to them. And then they become afraid if I go further and tell them all of it. But one day FBI in 82, December I guess it was of 82, in Atlanta, talked to me there in the Atlanta office and said, and he faked yawning. He said, you know what they do when you tell them all this? And this is back in 82 before I knew about being kidnapped. That was 83 when I found out, and all the other murders and mind control involved. He faked yawning, and he said, you bore them. It's not till they find out how it affects them that they care. Well, they care for themselves then, but that was the point. And I wanted to get this in case this video, the time limit's up. Larry Flint showed up here during the parody trial in the magazine about Jerry Falwell, and he was in the POF building, the federal building, where so much was done to me here in Roanoke, trying to get a place to live, living on the Appalachian Trail. I was meant to. My job shut down. I needed an attorney and the law to work for me, and it didn't. It was planned. So I've been locked up, and you would think I'm this criminal or something. I've been treated worse than the worst criminal that could be treated. But anyway, Larry Flint was here in Roanoke, and I've forgotten when that was, but it had to be after the parody. And I'm living on the Appalachian Trail, about 11 miles out from Roanoke, where I've been living, if you call it living here in Roanoke or around. So Jerry Falwell had sued him, and in the POF building, federal building, and I met a reporter, and again, no, this reporter had been with CBS here. I'm pretty sure of that. Well, NBC or CBS, I think it was CBS, I'm not, yeah. And he was in a wheelchair, and he had come back from fighting in one of the American wars, and he couldn't see. Before that happened, he was working as cameraman for the CBS or NBC local here in Roanoke. And they had filmed Larry Flint in court in POF building during the Falwell trial, and Flint's leg kept moving, and they had filmed it. Now then, he told me that they tried to get it put on here locally and couldn't. And they tried to reach out and get the film shown, and they were getting a lot of repercussion, him and whoever. So they tried to send it across to West Virginia, and evidently it got confiscated and a lot happened. He ended up going to war and was shot through where he was blind, through the temple. And he was in a wheelchair. Now, I don't know why the wheelchair, okay? But this is just some of it, and I'm going to show you the pictures before, and then I'm going to name off some of the mind control murders and just a couple of the patterns. Now, this gets far more than this over the years, but Peggy was the name given me of the twins. You got twins used in the mind control murders. You got the name Peggy. Now, Larry Flint, I didn't know this. The real Larry Flint, or this may be the real Larry Flint out there, and I hope I'm not causing him any more problems than he's had, than they've hurt him. But his first wife was named Peggy. Now then, after this endorsement here, I believe it was, or it was just prior to it in January, David Nelson's picture was on Hustler. I believe it's on the cover of it, or maybe not the cover, but there was a big deal in Hustler about him. Now, his mother, well, Ricky was murdered. He was flying out from Gunnersville, which is next to Huntsville, Alabama, and NASA and all this that gets involved in it. I was brought to Moulton, Alabama when I was kidnapped, worked for the DA in Huntsville, but there's a lot about Huntsville. Well, Ricky was flying out of there, out of Gunnersville, Scottsville, and it's just a few miles from Huntsville, and his plane, he died. And they had David in the Hustler January, I believe, which would have been 84, just prior to this endorsement of me. And I got to see if this is going, I don't know. But their mother, Ricky and David's mother, was named Peggy, her real name. Now then, I'm just giving you a couple of them, like the DA I worked for was Simpson in Huntsville, and the next job I had was for Doyle Duke, as in the Duke of Windsor was supposed to have married Wallace Simpson, which was a lie. My father was married to Claudia Ruth O'Keefe, an American, and all this was made up, and they've gotten away with it. History is nothing but a lie. And also I lived at Warren House Apartments, which Warren House is associated with the Warren Commission. And it covered up the Kennedy because they wouldn't tell about me and my kidnapping and the takeover of the British Empire by the Americans. So anyway, I'll just give you a little bit like Moonraker and MD, A License to Kill, about mind control. You can make a plane veer off course. You can put your chip. They don't even need that anymore. And your decision making is not yours anymore. It belongs to the person that's programmed you. Like he can program you to go out and shoot, like the Aurora, Colorado. I'm hurrying because I want to get this on this tape, and I'm hurting, and it's cold in here and all that, and I'm not sure anybody watches this, and I got to look and see if this is even going up. Well, it won't. They won't take this one. This is 21 minutes.